Hi there, I'm Carol the Coach. I'm Carol Jurgensen Sheets, and I have the only radio show on iTunes specifically for sexual addiction and partner sensitive treatment. You know, not every sex addict has a partner, but clearly there's a large majority of sex addicts out there that do. And so I believe it's important to help both the sex addict and the partner. Today we're going to be talking about resources and tools for the sex addict. There are a lot of resources and tools for you out there. It's amazing when I talk to people either on the radio show or in my practice and they don't know about the tools. And I know that you probably have heard me talk about the 10 tools for sexual recovery. They're the minimum that you can do on a daily basis. And tonight, I want to talk to you about the 3 circles. This specifically comes from the Green Book, which is Sex Addicts Anonymous. And you can get that on the web, or you can go to the website, sexaddictsanonymous.org. I would highly recommend that you buy this book, because this book is divided into the 12-step process that will transform your life. Now, I know not every person that has sexual addiction believes in the 12-step process, and that's fair. But in all my years of working with sex addicts and working the 8 out of 10 recovery tools on a daily basis, the first 5 have to do with sexual addiction and the 12-step process. And they are going to meetings, having a sponsor, which you have to ask for, or you get assigned when you go to the meetings. And then doing the 12-step work, reading Sex Addicts Anonymous, the Green Book, and making friends and calling people in the fellowship. It's connection. Now, in that Green Book, there is something called the 3 circles. And I happen to have a copy of that here. I hope you can see that. And it's interesting. If you were to look at your life and you drew 3 circles, the inner circle would be those behaviors that absolutely are sexually addictive in nature. You know, that happens to be prostitution, exhibitionism, pornography, objectification. It may mean frauderism, which is touching people. It might be sexual exploitation. And whatever those behaviors are, you put in the inner circle. For some people, it may not just be pornography, it may be images. Images that take your mind into fantasy and open up the floodgates for sexually addictive behaviors. That second circle, if this is the inner, this is the middle. That middle circle is designated for slippery slope behaviors. And slippery slope behaviors are those behaviors that may not be actual sexually addictive behaviors, but they're sending you in that direction. They are opening again the floodgates for provocative, compulsive, sexually addictive behaviors. So that might be looking at bathing suits. That might be looking at lingerie. That might be flirting with women. That might be dating when you're married. That might be listening to 800 numbers. That might be going on the web in search for enticing articles. So you got to think about what are the behaviors that you don't consider sexual addiction, but you know they are a cousin to sexual addiction, and they can take you there. And this is the thing about sexual addiction. If you participate in that middle circle behavior, I guarantee you that you will slip and go into sexually addictive behaviors. It may not happen the first 10 minutes, the first hour, the first day, or even the first week. But when you open the brain to neurotransmitter chemicals that activate that area of your brain that has the reward center, what ends up happening is that you create new neurocircuitry that's unhealthy and addictive. And that is what we want to prevent. You know, Patrick Carnes says that sexual addiction is a brain chemistry problem. And it takes 3 to 5 years to absolutely shut down that reward center, create substitutions that are healthy, that produce dopamine and chemicals, serotonin, all sorts of things. And that this is not something that you can correct or cure in a week, a month, or even a year. You know, I had a man in my office the other day, and he is doing really well. He's got about 28 months of recovery with an occasional slip. Now, a slip is when you make a bad choice. You click on an image that you shouldn't. You make a phone call to somebody that you shouldn't. But it's not full-blown relapse behavior. And interestingly enough, this man is really at a point where he wants his wife to recognize how well he has done. And he wants to be praised for it. And the women that I talk to, the wives say, or the girlfriends say, I am not praising him for behavior that he should be displaying every day of his life. I should be able to trust him. He shouldn't be going to images. He shouldn't be going to street corners. He shouldn't be going to massage parlors. And I agree with the partners, and yet what I know to be true is about 2 years into doing really good work, men, like all people, and women sex addicts too, but all human beings want to be acknowledged for the changes that they've made. Because here's the truth of the matter. You've probably heard that in addiction, it's important to decide to stop for yourself. But in reality, most sex addicts stop their behaviors for somebody else. And then they recognize how important it is to stop for themselves. Not for their wives, not for their girlfriends, not for their husbands, but for themselves. And so clearly, what may have started to appease somebody else, or because you caused somebody else so much suffering, becomes the reality for oneself. That's the beauty of the program. Okay, this third outer circle are healthy circle behaviors. Now, that may be exercise. That may be Bible study. That may be woodworking. That may be skiing. That may be playing cards. That may be riding horses. That may be reading nonfiction. Whatever the behaviors are, they contribute to a healthy lifestyle. And that's what we want our sex addicts to learn. We want them to find things that absolutely create dopamine in the reward center of the brain that are healthy. You know, for single men, we want them to date. We want them to really work on, understandably, pacing themselves in a relationship so that it doesn't start out sexual, and so that there's good emotional decisions and connections made before it becomes sexual. So those are healthy behaviors. So again, you have your sexually addictive behaviors. You have your slippery slope behaviors. And you have your healthy behaviors. So this is the 3 circles. I would love for you to look at your life, look at your addiction, and write down what you would put in each one of these circles, and be honest with yourself. If you, when you drink, you lose your inhibitions and you act out, then don't put drinking over here in slippery slope behaviors, because more often than not, drinking is a gateway for your sexually addictive behaviors. Be honest with yourself. Do this with somebody that you know that has sexual addiction. That's why the 12 steps are so important. There's also something called Recovery Nation, and it's an internet support group. You can do that too. If you don't live in an area that has 12-step groups for sex addicts, SA or SAA, there are always telephone meetings that you can participate in. There are plenty of resources for you. You just have to start doing the work, because when you do, you find out that it works. I'm Carol the coach, and we'll talk later about what you can do to remain the healthiest individual you can be.